Whistling, he mounted the cloud somersault to leap up to the tall summit, where he pushed aside the creepers and vines to look all around. There was, however, not a sound or a trace of human beings. He spoke aloud to himself. "I've made a mistake. I've made a mistake. I should never have let the oldie gold star go. He was actually trying to frighten me. If there's any monster spirit around here, he would have jumped out and played in the wind, or he would fool with his lance or rod to practice his martial art. How is it that there is no one?" As he was thus talking to himself, he heard the loud bangs of a rattle behind the mountain. Turning hurriedly to look, he discovered a little fiend, hauling a banner on his shoulder which had on it the inscribed word, "Command." He had a bell tied to his waist, and he was beating a rattle with his hand as he walked from north to south. Pilgrim stared at him and thought that he was about 12 feet in height. Smiling to himself, Pilgrim said, "He must be a postal soldier on his way to deliver a document. Let me eavesdrop on him to see what he has to say. Dear great sage." Making the magic sign with his fingers, he recited a spell and changed, with one shake of his body, into a fly. He flew up to his cap and alighted gently on it to eavesdrop on the fiend. After he had turned onto the main road, the little fiend kept beating his rattle and shaking his bell, while he mumbled to himself. Those of us patrolling the mountain should all be on guard against that pilgrim son. He knows how to change into a fly. Astounded by what he heard, Pilgrim said to himself, "He must have seen me. How could he know my name, and how could he know I might change into a fly if he hadn't?" But that little fiend, you see, had not seen him. It was actually those archdemons who somehow managed to give this instruction to the little fiends, and this one was just repeating what he heard. Pilgrim, of course, did not know this. Suspecting that he had been seen, he was about to slay the fiend with the rod when he thought to himself, "I recall that the gold star told 8 rules that there were 3 old fiends and some 47 or 48,000 little fiends. If those little fiends are like this one, another 40,000 won't make a bit of difference. But I wonder how powerful are those 3 old demons? Let me go question him, then I can raise my hands." Dear great sage. How is he going to question him, you ask? He leapt down from his cap and alighted instead on a tree to allow the little fiend to walk a few steps ahead. Quickly he changed into another little fiend, having, in fact, the same clothes, and like him, beating the rattle, shaking the bell, hauling the banner, and mumbling the same words. The only difference was that he was several inches taller than the other fiend. He ran up to the other little fiend and called out, "You on the road, wait for me." Turning around, the little fiend said, "Where did you come from?" "My good man," said Pilgrim with a giggle. "Can't you recognize someone from the same family?" "You're not in our family," said the little fiend. "What do you mean?" said Pilgrim. "Take a good look." "But you look unfamiliar," said the little fiend. "I don't recognize you. I don't recognize you. I know I look unfamiliar," replied Pilgrim. "I'm one of those who tend the fires, and you've seldom met me." Shaking his head, the little fiend said, "Never. Never. Even among those brothers in our cave who tend the fires, there's no one with a pointed mouth like yours." Pilgrim thought to himself, "I've made my mouth a little too pointed." He lowered his head at once and gave his mouth a rub, saying, "My mouth's not pointed." Immediately, his mouth was not pointed anymore. "Just now," said the little fiend, "your mouth was pointed. How could it change like that after you gave it a rub? How baffling. You can't very well belong to our family. I have never seen you before. It's too suspicious. Moreover, the domestic laws of our great kings are very strict. Those who tend the fires always tend the fires, and those who patrol the mountain will patrol the mountain. They couldn't have asked you to tend the fires, and then asked you also to patrol the mountain, could they?" Exceedingly clever with his mouth, Pilgrim at once replied, "You have no idea that our great kings had promoted me, when they saw how good I was at tending the fires, and asked me to patrol the mountain. The little fiend said, "All right. There are 40 of us who patrol the mountain to one platoon, and we have altogether 10 platoons. Each of us is different in age, and each has a different name. To prevent confusion among the ranks and to facilitate taking the roll, our great kings gave us each a nameplate. Do you have one?" Now Pilgrim had changed into a semblance of only what he could see of the little fiend. Namely, how he was dressed and what he was doing. Since he had not seen the plate, he, of course, did not have it on him. Dear great sage. Refusing to admit that he had none, he followed the drift of the question instead and said, "How could I not have a plate? I just received a brand new one. But you take out yours first for me to have a look." Completely unaware that this was a trick, that little fiend hitched up his clothes and pulled out for Pilgrim to see a gold-lacquered plate, which was tied to his body with a small cotton thread. On the back of the plate Pilgrim saw the inscription, "In command of all demons." In front there were 3 printed words, "Little Wind Cutter." He thought to himself, "It goes without saying that those who patrol the mountain will be named some sort of wind cutters." He therefore said to the little fiend, "Lower your clothes now, and let me show you my plate." Turning to one side, Pilgrim yanked off a small piece of hair from the tip of his tail and gave it a pinch, whispering, "Change." It changed at once into another gold-lacquered plate that had a small cotton thread attached to it. On it were the 3 printed words, "Chief Wind Cutter." When he took it out and showed it to him, the little fiend was greatly taken aback. "We are all named Little Wind Cutters," he cried. "But how could you have the name of Chief Wind Cutter?" As he had always acted with the greatest calculation and spoken with the utmost shrewdness, Pilgrim immediately said, "You really have no idea that our great kings promoted me to be a patrol commander when they saw how well I tended the fires. They also gave me a new plate with the name, Chief Wind Cutter, and the charge that I would lead the 40 of you in this platoon." On hearing this, the fiend bowed hurriedly, saying, Captain, you've just been commissioned, and that's why you look unfamiliar. Please forgive me for offending you with my words. I won't blame you," chuckled Pilgrim as he returned his bow. "But I do have a request, an introductory gift of 5 ounces of silver per person." "Don't be too impatient, Captain," said the little fiend. "Let me join up with my platoon at the south of the ridge, and we'll all chip in." "In that case," said Pilgrim, "I'll go with you." Indeed, the little fiend walked ahead, while the great sage followed him. In less than a few miles, they came upon a pen peak. Why was it called a pen peak, you ask? On that mountain the peak rose straight up for some 40 or 50 feet, as a pen sticking up from its rack. Hence the name. After Pilgrim went up there, he gave his tail a wag, and leapt to the tallest point to sit down. "Wind cutters," he cried. "Gather around." All those little wind cutters bowed to him down below, saying, "Captain, we wait on you." "Do you know?" asked Pilgrim. "Why the great kings sent me out here?" "No, we don't," replied the little fiends. Pilgrim said, "The great kings want to devour the Tang monk, but their only fear is that Pilgrim's son has vast magic powers. He is capable of many transformations, they claim, and they are afraid that he may change into a little wind cutter to walk on this road to spy on us. They therefore have promoted me to Chief Wind Cutter, and asked me to make an investigation, to see whether there is any specious one among your platoon." "Captain," all those little wind cutters said in unison, "we are all genuine." "If you are," said Pilgrim, "do you happen to know what sort of abilities our great kings possess?" One of the little wind cutters said, "I do." "If you do," said Pilgrim, "tell me quickly. If I agree with you, you are genuine, but if you make the slightest error, you are a specious one. I'll certainly arrest you and take you to see the great kings." When that little wind cutter saw him sitting loftily on the peak and wielding his authority left and right, he had little choice but to speak the truth, saying, Our great king has vast magic powers and enormous abilities. With one gulp, he once swallowed 100,000 celestial warriors. On hearing this, Pilgrim bellowed, "You're false." Horrified, the little wind cutter said, "Father Captain, I'm real. How could you say that I'm false?" "If you are," said Pilgrim, "why did you babble? How big is the great king that he can swallow, with one gulp, 100,000 celestial warriors?" The little wind cutter said, "Perhaps the captain does not know that our great king is capable of such transformation, that he can be big enough to reach the celestial hall when he wants to, or he can become as small as a vegetable seed." When the Lady Queen Mother convened the Festival of Immortal Peaches in a former year, and did not send an invitation to our great king, he wanted to strive with heaven. The Jade Emperor sent 100,000 celestial warriors to bring him to submission, but our great king exercised his magic body of transformation, and opened his mouth big and wide as a city gate. He charged at the celestial warriors, so terrifying them that they dared not do battle, and closed up the South Heaven Gate instead. That's what I meant when I said that he once swallowed 100,000 celestial warriors with one gulp.